Howdy, beautiful people. This is Denise Ramon, who's an
Hi.
amazing channel and healer. Information below, but also on the screen eventually. And we have my son Erik on the Afterlife, and we're going to talk to not so beautiful a person. Well, in the spirit perspective, he is Joseph Stalin, right? So let me read a little bit about him. Not a nice one. As Trump would say, he's a real beauty. Joseph Stalin, 1878 to 1953, was the Soviet politician and revolutionary who led the Soviet Union from 1924 until his death in 53. He held power as General Secretary of the Communist Party from 22 to 52, chairman of the Council of Ministers from 1941 until his death, initially governed as part of a collective leadership. Stalin consolidated power to become a dictator, but by the 30s, the totalitarian political system which he established was known as Stalinism. And I think he killed millions. I'll actually look that up. Well, I'm doing something on my iPhone, but
Eric's doing this. When you said you think he killed millions,
oh God,
he's
yeah,
doing
oh my
he's
God.
doing this.
How many deaths on Stalin? 9 million.
Shit.
Deliberately killed 6 million, rose to 9 million if foreseeable deaths arise from the policies were taken into account. All right, well, let's ask questions from the community. I love you, Erik.
Okay. He says, "I love you, Mama." It's like he's got protection around us both because
Oh,
that this fella definitely was never a nice person.
what about now? What do you see in him now, Denise?
You know, it's like, you know, Erik says it's like he's crawling on his knees doing everything right, doing everything nice, and the why he says he's crying, like he's really um, working hard to make things better for this environment, this planet, or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't feel like all of him was supposed to be really so mean. I don't feel like that was his whole role.
We'll probably have a question about spiritual contracts like we did with our
Okay.
Hitler review, but what do you mean helping the planet environmentally? I mean, exactly what do you
Everything, Erik
Okay.
says, everything. Yeah,
All right.
just really helping.
Were you really demonically possessed the way several Catholic exorcists have asserted in recent years? According to multiple high-ranking Vatican exorcists, demons have professed to possessing Joseph Stalin.
You know, Erik is saying, Erik is speaking for him because it's almost like his energy, the way it has to, I don't know how to explain it to really, it kind of like has to come down, not come down to our level, but just come down a little bit. And, um, and then Erik, and also he didn't speak English is what I'm hearing. And so, not that that's an issue now, but that's always, I need to recognize that in people, from all I've gotten
Yeah.
through channeling people that don't speak English or that wasn't their first language. But what I get is, wasn't possessed in like the way the church says, but there definitely was a lot of chitter chatter in his brain. I get a lot of mental illness, a lot of mental
What
illness.
about negative
And I'm
entities from the from other dimensions?
there
Demons, negative entity attachments.
well, there definitely was some. Erik says there definitely was that going on. It's like they saw him as an open vessel, and I feel like there was mental illness in him. To be honest with you, I just feel like there was a lot of mental illness, a lot of paranoia in him. Um, like just I don't, and I'm asking like what kind of mental illness, and I
Yeah.
just get there was um, I get there was some form of schizophrenia in him.
Maybe a schizoaffective disorder?
That's it. Yeah, I get that because that's how he was telling me, like bipolar and some other stuff with it. There was that in there. And I just get from a very young age, something was always off kiltered with this man.
So, that attracts mental illnesses like that do attract negative entities to attach, to come from other dimensions. All right, did you ever regret not saving your own son's life after he was captured by the German army in 1941 and tortured to death? I'll read a little bit. Yakov, his son from his first wife, was a soldier in the Red Army and was captured early on in World War II. When the Germans proposed to free him at a prisoner swap, Stalin refused, as he believed his husband surrendered voluntarily. So that pissed him off. Yakov died in a Nazi concentration camp in 1943. So do you regret that? Let's hope that you can speak in your own voice. We'll see.
Well, he's saying, Erik just stepped aside. That's why I was putting my chair back because Erik was moving back. He says no.
Why?
When he was here, no. When he was here, he said no, he did not, because he was too far removed from any kind of emotion. Other than, like when it came to like love and compassion, he was too far removed from that emotion. So no. And I feel like he didn't think that would happen to his son.
Wow. How do you feel about that now? And was there a contract in that?
Well, he says, really, it was a good thing that it didn't, nothing resolved itself with that, because he's saying you get two of those people together, Hitler and him together, to converse together and being on the same team, it would have even been worse for the world, he said.
Oh, wow.
So really, it was a good thing that they didn't, they weren't able to negotiate. He said, of course, he says, he can see how far removed he was from his human self. It's like he was so disconnected. He could see how far removed. And I, of course, he had empathy or whatever when he saw what happened to his son, because I don't feel like his son like died real quick. I think they kind of like dragged it out.
Sounds like, yeah.
I just feel like it was dragged out as a form of what we would say torture, but he says it was a form of entertainment for the side that did that. That was entertainment for them.
Oof.
As it was for him with the stuff he did. He said it was a form of entertainment.
Did you actually die of natural causes? They say you died of a stroke. Or did Lavrenti Beria poison you the way some Soviet commissars suspected?
He says, one will never know for sure, because I can say one thing, but unless it's coming from me or they have solid evidence, one side's going to believe whatever they want. Right. But he says he died. What he really died from is what he caused. And because you can't behave in that manner and just die from natural causes. He said, so it was a collectiveness. I do feel like there were people that wanted to poison him because he was just god awful to everybody. He had zero friends, he said, zero, because the people that claimed to be his friends were just doing that as like playing the game. So he had zero friends. So did someone poison him? I feel like there were several attempts, is what he wasn't poisoned.
So it sounds like he died of his own darkness. Is that what you're saying? His,
That Erik says yes, that's what he did because you can't, even though you could care less what you're doing to other people. Erik says your body is all living uh, entities and everything, and they're taking on that hate, that meanness, whatever it is, and that's not what they're about.
destroys the
So of
body.
course they're gonna respond to that, and the hardness, it doesn't, you don't process your food right because they're not operating right. And he
Oh
said,
yeah.
so yeah.
Mm. All
Mm-hmm.
right. This is a little bit of a long
Oof.
one, but just not that bad. Do you regret having ruled with so much terror during your regime that your own aides were too afraid to enter your room to check on you as you lay dying on the floor? Their fear of not following Stalin's strict orders to not enter his room is what allowed him to die, since medical help still could have saved his life had someone reached him in time. So, do you regret that? They were so scared you couldn't possibly be saved?
He said no because he said, even though he was such a feared individual, he lived in fear him own self. And it's like it really put him out of his misery, is what it did. Um, because he says you just can't continue to behave like that and be happy.
No, you can't. So how long were you laying on the floor before your soul left your body?
Um, what he shows me is I get several hours, but I saw it was 10, so I don't know if it was 10 hours.
Yeah.
But what he is telling me was it's like he needed to see what was going on. He needed to really get a good look at what was going on with what he did, where he was, and everything. Because when he was out of his body and just looking at everything, he's also able to see everything on the outside of the walls and hear
Yeah.
everything too.
Oh boy.
Um, I feel like there was kind of course, people were scared. He says that he was going to come back alive, and they were real afraid. But at the same time, he could tell that everybody was almost, there was a few that weren't, but almost everybody else was relieved
Oh yeah.
that he had stopped breathing, that he died, but there was fear of who was going to take his place.
So how long was it? 10 hours of him lying on the floor with his spirit still in his body? Or are you saying 10 hours of hanging around after he transitioned?
He said it took him about, he said 4 to 5 hours before he finally took his last breath.
Oh, okay. And 10
But he
hours.
couldn't say any. Yeah, and then an additional hours, 10 hours ago. But he said he couldn't say anything. So I guess you said what did he have,
It
a
could have been a
stroke? Did you
stroke.
say?
Yeah.
It's like, because that's what I feel like, things were restricted here.
Yeah. Stroke on the
And so
verb
he,
that made him aphasic, not able to speak. Could be.
yeah, because he's shown me his throat, not able to do anything. And I just don't feel like his moaning or what. I get a lot of fear. He had a lot of fear because
Mhm. Yeah. He knew it
here
was
he
coming.
held all the power, and now he can't do anything. So, and I get a lot of
Powerless.
fear.
Do,
Yes,
do you think he could have been a force for good to be taken a different path
no,
because it was your contract?
because well, because I feel like there was some mental illness undiagnosed as a teenager and stuff, and I just don't feel like that. Someone that comes from a very loving environment and a very nurturing environment grows up to want to be so
Yeah.
god awful.
Yeah. What about
So
your
I just,
childhood? How was your childhood?
you know, it's I get that there was like a lot of there wasn't a whole lot of nurturing going on in there. I feel like he had a mother that cared, that loved him and that, but I just don't feel like there was, from how he showed me, it's like he was always on his own. And I just don't feel like he was, I don't feel like he had a whole lot of friends growing up either.
They kind of felt symptoms, felt sense of abandonment and or neglect, even though his parents, his mother may have loved him.
I just don't feel like he fit in. And I'm wondering if he was short, because he just felt, the way he shows me, like he always felt small.
Yeah,
And he just didn't, I
metaphor.
just don't feel like he had a lot of playmates
Okay.
and stuff.
Uh, was all you did, was it really for money and power, or did you think you were doing something beneficial for the people? We'll get to, I got some questions about the contract, so.
Well, he says, of course, you think it's all beneficial because that's why you're doing it. There's always, you do everything because there's a benefit for it. But
For you or for the people or
well,
for
he
both?
well he says, of course, you think it's for the good of all, but he says it
Oh,
all is about you. It's and this is where he says it's like it's entertainment for him. You see fear in people, um, and it's you feel powerful, and then as you start exercising that more, you see how fearful people are, and it just makes you feel more powerful. Um, and that's something that he always wanted to feel, was very powerful. And I think he thought he was like a god or something, that he could say who could do this and who couldn't do that.
he's
And
got the whole
he,
buffet of mental illness, probably borderline personality, narcissism, all sorts of stuff, beside what we already discussed. So,
yes,
did you really feel like you were helping the Russian people, even though you instilled fear? Did you, in your heart, say, I'm doing good, I'm helping Mother Russia?
he felt like he was helping the country.
Okay, all right.
That's what he felt like, helping the country.
Okay. I want to ask Stalin if he had any mental illnesses. We talked about that. And is that one of the reasons why outlandish ideas and events, like millions of his own people's death occurring, relating to that, we have covered that, relating to that idea, was communism built and fabricated by an ill person with ill ideas, Marx? And if so, does that mean in a rational society, we could use this ideology? After all, it doesn't seem to have its purpose in a multifaceted, complex sociological environment that we live in. So I'm not sure what that means. Do you know what that means, Erik? What's this kind of person trying to say?
Well, they're like thinning it out and condensing it the way they
Yeah,
show me. They're like cutting it up for me. So what they believe is what he says, what he believes, and a lot of people who are in that environment, dictatorship or whatever. He says he felt like it's about control.
yeah,
And if he had control of everything, then there wouldn't be anything to fear. There wouldn't be anything
yeah.
to worry about. And he says this is where the paranoia comes in, where you think everybody's coming to get you. And um, and he kind of laughs. He says, "How long has Russia felt like people were coming to get them? And how they had to have these
TV.
defenses."
Yeah,
So yeah, so he says, this is why you do this, and so you have it in your mind that you're doing it for protection, you're doing it for this, um, and you have to gain control, you have to assert fear, because you can't let people know where your weaknesses are,
right. So kill
because
those
when
that
you
you can't
see,
control.
right, and so you know he says they had spies out, young spies is what he shows me, like young kids and young boys, mainly spies, hanging around other friends and that, listening to conversations,
Trying to find out his
and then
innocence.
report,
Yeah.
and to find, yeah, and to send it back to them, and in return I feel like they got like extra food or a little bit of money, or they got I feel like something metal. So I don't know if it was coins or what. And so they thought they were safe.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then people had people after him. They said he just there was it was never there was never
Awesome.
no security. And in the way he shows me, it's like, you know how you're in a line, like a relay race, and you run and then you get at the back of the line, and the next person, and they get in the back of the line. This is how he says informants were. They're always getting in the back of the line to go to the
Jesus.
next people. So yeah,
How was your relationship with your father?
he says he really loved his father dearly, but I feel like his father was a very the way he said it, he was very cold.
Mm,
He wasn't a very no didn't show affection. Very aggressive. I feel like in the way his speech is what he's saying. Um, just he said you knew your father. He said he knew my father cared,
yeah,
but yet his behavior was unpredictable. Also,
I got you. Did you conspire to murder Lennon?
there was definitely talks. Yes,
So, all right, who,
who was that?
what? Lennon, he
Lenin.
was a leader before. Who
Oh,
was your backer? The people at the top, was it black nobility, gray slash black pope, Zionist, 13 families? Are you with Turk? I don't know what any of that is. So are any of those people that backed you or entities that backed you?
I don't get that those were the names. I don't get
Okay.
that. You know, he's and I feel like he's in. Um,
Who backed you then?
I feel like he's in consciousness. You know, and light is what. Because otherwise Erik wouldn't bring him in, and we wouldn't be able to bring him in because we
Oh
don't
yeah.
flirt with that. We don't flirt with that. Um, I get like it was the way he's showing me. It was like an array of different entities that were coming in, you know, and the entities were about seeking control, you know,
Yeah.
seeking control of the
Okay.
planet, not people, but the planet.
Okay. All right. So doctor's plot. We're going to talk about that. Was the doctor's plot real? And if so, how would it have ended if you were able to see it through? So the doctor's plot was a Soviet state-sponsored anti-Semitic campaign and a conspiracy theory that alleged a cabal of prominent medical specialists, predominantly of Jewish ethnicity, intended to murder leading government and party officials. It was also known as the case of the saboteur doctors or the killer doctors. A group of mostly Jewish doctors from Moscow were accused of a conspiracy to assassinate Soviet lead. Does that really happen? Is that true?
He said yes.
Wow. It didn't really go through. It wasn't seen through. But if it had been, what would have happened to in the world? What would be different?
Well, if it went through, I, he says there would be what we're fighting about now, what the world is fighting about now, wouldn't be fighting that. It would be fighting something different,
Okay.
is what he says.
All right. Oh, probably true. What is your opinion of what is going on in our world today?
Well, you know, when he said that, of course, he said, you know, there's sadness, but he also is saying that this is this is the last of almost the last of what's going on and I feel like this is like almost the end of the wars coming, like
Okay.
they're
Into
like
a more golden
exhausting,
period. Yeah.
yeah, they're exhausting what's left to exhaust so we can get to the next part. And he says we're
Sure.
close to it as well.
If you could change some things in Russia, what would you do? And what do you think of Putin? So what would you change in Russia? What do you think about Putin? You can answer either first.
Well, he says, what does he think of Putin? Putin is basically like he was, um, and when he says that, I get the feeling of cold and very callous.
Mm.
And he says, and very manipulative, and the way he shows me feeding lies, because he's telling me what he told people were lies so that people would do what they would do. And I feel like the way he says, like Putin is telling lies so people would do what they would do, what they're doing. So, he says what Putin needs is just, he goes, and Erik says it's going to sound cliche, but what he's saying is we need to send this fella a bunch of light, a bunch of love, because
Yeah.
he's just in total darkness, and is what's going on with him. And, it's in this illusion. And I the way he shows me, it's like he's got captivated in this illusion,
Yeah.
this that he has to save Russia,
Yeah.
and there's nothing to save.
Mm. Do you agree with his invasion of Ukraine?
No,
All right. Do you agree with
no.
the fact that Russia is a communist country? Do you like that? We'll talk
He
more about
says
that in part two, of course.
he says where he is now, absolutely not. He doesn't, because communism, it doesn't. There's no good in it. There isn't, even though we have ourselves convinced that there is, but he says there's no good in communism. There is absolutely nothing good about it.
Do you think, Tim Walz, the new vice presidential candidate, don't send any hate mails because I'm just asking a question. He went to China so many times and praised the communism of China, and told the students that he taught how wonderful he thought it was. Is he a communist or just a socialist, or neither? Erik, you might have to answer this.
Ooh, I get that from the STALIN guy, he's not answering that, but
Okay.
I get it's not because he thinks that he is or isn't. I just get like, I don't know. I just get like that's not even worth answering, because that's what it's. I just don't feel like. I don't know. I just feel like that's not really what's going on. He's the way he says you're talking about two separate things, and
Okay.
everybody has to fit into these different categories, and I don't feel like that's it.
Well, is he more the spectrum of communism or more toward the spectrum of representative democracy? If where in the scale?
Erik and STALIN both said democracy. They
Okay.
both said democracy. I sure hope so. I mean, not that
Yeah.
even if he got in office or not in office, I would hope that we didn't have people
Yeah.
of
All right.
that nature.
Let's pause. We'll stop,
Okay.
and y'all hit the notification bell. Please hit the like button so we can get good algorithms, and please subscribe. And we're gonna start talking about the soul contract between Stalin and Russia and the collective, and all sorts of cool other things next. So don't miss out. Thank you.